The morning mist clung to the grounds of Windsor Castle as Royal Protection Officer Sarah Mitchell completed her routine security sweep of the private dining quarters. Her trained eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, every detail that might seem out of place. After 12 years protecting the royal family, Sarah had developed an almost supernatural sense for detecting trouble before it materialized. The castle buzzed with anticipation for the upcoming state dinner honoring the visiting Danish Prime Minister. It would be Catherine, Princess of Wales's first major hosting duty since recovering from her recent health challenges, and the entire household staff worked tirelessly to ensure every detail met the highest standards. The menu had been carefully planned weeks in advance, taking into account Catherine's current dietary restrictions recommended by her medical team. Sarah noticed Camilla, the queen consort, emerging from the private kitchen corridor earlier than usual. Something about her demeanor struck Sarah as odd, a certain hurried quality that seemed inconsistent with Camilla's typically composed royal bearing. The queen consort clutched a small wrapped package close to her chest and glanced around nervously before disappearing into her private apartments. The interaction lasted mere seconds, but Sarah's instincts immediately sharpened. During her years of service, she had witnessed enough palace intrigue to recognize when something felt wrong. The timing seemed particularly suspicious, given that the kitchen staff had explicit instructions that no unauthorized personnel should access the preparation areas during the final stages of menu planning. Later that morning, Sarah positioned herself strategically near the main kitchen entrance during the staff briefing. Head chef Marcus Williams addressed his team about the evening's preparations, emphasizing the critical importance of following Catherine's dietary guidelines, exactly as specified by the palace medical staff. The princess had been advised to avoid certain ingredients that could interfere with her ongoing treatment, and the entire kitchen staff had been thoroughly briefed on these restrictions. Tonight's success depends on our attention to every single detail, Chef Williams stressed, his voice carrying the weight of decades serving the royal household. The princess's health must be our absolute priority. Any deviation from the approved menu could have serious consequences. Sarah watched the kitchen staff nod solemnly, understanding the gravity of their responsibility. She also noticed how Camilla's personal assistant, Margaret Thornfield, lingered near the doorway throughout the briefing, taking careful notes despite having no official role in the evening's preparations. Margaret had served Camilla loyally for over 15 years, and her unexpected presence in the kitchen area raised additional red flags in Sarah's mind. The afternoon brought increased activity as final preparations intensified. Sarah maintained her regular patrol schedule, while keeping a discreet eye on any unusual movements around the dining and kitchen areas. She observed Margaret making several trips between Camilla's quarters and various service areas of the castle, each time carrying different packages or documents. During one of these observations, Sarah witnessed Margaret entering the private pantry where the princess's specially prepared ingredients were stored. The pantry remained off-limits to everyone except the head chef and his designated assistant, making Margaret's presence there highly irregular. Sarah quickly consulted the duty roster and confirmed that Margaret had no authorized access to that area. The security officer faced a delicate situation, directly confronting the queen consort's personal assistant without concrete evidence could create a diplomatic incident within the royal household. However, Sarah's protective instincts screamed that something potentially dangerous was unfolding. She decided to implement enhanced surveillance protocols without alerting the subjects of her suspicion. Using the castle's internal monitoring system, Sarah began documenting Margaret's movements throughout the afternoon. The assistant made 3 more unauthorized visits to restricted kitchen areas, each time when the regular staff was occupied elsewhere. During the final visit, Sarah observed Margaret carefully examining several sealed containers in the special dietary storage area. The pieces of a troubling puzzle began forming in Sarah's mind. The queen consort's unusual behavior that morning, her assistant's repeated unauthorized access to sensitive areas, and the timing of these activities just hours before Catherine's important public appearance created a pattern that demanded immediate Investigation, Sarah's training had taught her to think systematically about potential threats to royal family members. While physical attacks remained the most obvious danger, subtler forms of harm could prove equally devastating. A carefully planned incident involving Catherine's specialized dietary requirements could create a health crisis that would not only endanger the princes personally but also undermine public confidence in the royal family's security protocols. The implications extended far beyond a single evening's event. Catherine's return to full royal duties represented a crucial moment for the monarchy's stability and public image. Any incident that forced her withdrawal from public life again could have lasting consequences for the institution's reputation and effectiveness. As the dinner hour approached, Sarah made a critical decision. She would implement emergency protocols designed to protect Catherine without creating unnecessary drama or alerting potential conspirators to her suspicions. The plan required careful coordination with trusted kitchen staff and strategic positioning of additional security personnel. Sarah approached Chef Williams privately, requesting a final security review of all ingredients and preparation procedures. She phrased her request as a routine precaution rather than response to specific threats, allowing the chef to maintain normal operations while providing an opportunity for thorough inspection. "I want to personally verify our security protocols one final time," Sarah explained to the chef. "Given the princess's health considerations and tonight's importance, we should leave nothing to chance." Chef Williams readily agreed, understanding that extra caution served everyone's interests. Together, they began a systematic examination of every component of the evening's menu, paying particular attention to items specifically prepared for Catherine's dietary needs. What they discovered would soon reveal the true scope of the threat facing the Princess of Wales. The investigation was about to uncover a plot that reached into the heart of the royal family itself, challenging everything Sarah thought she knew about loyalty, duty, and the lengths some people would go to pursue their hidden agendas. The evening that was meant to mark Catherine's triumphant return to royal duties instead became the stage for a dangerous game of palace intrigue that could have cost the princess her health, her reputation, and possibly her life. Chef Williams led Sarah through the pristine kitchen where his staff worked with military precision, preparing the evening's feast. The familiar sounds of professional cooking filled the air, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables, the gentle sizzle of sauces reducing, and the quiet efficiency of a team that had worked together for years. Everything appeared normal on the surface, but Sarah's trained instincts remained on high alert. "Let's start with the princess's special dietary preparations," Chef Williams suggested, guiding Sarah toward a separate preparation area maintained exclusively for royal family members with specific nutritional requirements. The area was kept isolated from the main kitchen to prevent cross-contamination and ensure absolute control over ingredients and preparation methods. As they approached the specialized station, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. The security seal on one of Catherine's prepared meal components had been broken and carefully resealed. The tampering was subtle, almost invisible to casual observation, but unmistakable to someone trained to notice such details. Someone had accessed the princess's food after the initial preparation and security verification. "Marcus, when was this container last opened?" Sarah asked, pointing to the compromised seal without touching anything. The chef examined the container closely, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "This should have remained sealed since this morning's preparation. No one was authorized to open it until the final plating." His voice carried the weight of someone realizing that his kitchen's security had been breached. Sarah immediately implemented containment protocols. She instructed Chef Williams to isolate all of Catherine's specially prepared items and prepare emergency alternatives using ingredients from the secure backup supply. The original items would require thorough testing before anyone could determine what had been done to them. While the chef organized his staff to create replacement dishes, Sarah discreetly contacted the palace medical team. Dr. Elizabeth Harrington, Catherine's personal physician, arrived within minutes. bringing portable testing equipment designed to detect various substances that could pose health risks to someone in the princess's condition. "What exactly are we looking for?" Dr. Harrington asked as she began setting up her testing apparatus in a private room adjacent to the kitchen. "I'm not sure yet, but someone gained unauthorized access to the princess's food. Given her current health status and medication regimen, we need to test for anything that could cause adverse reactions," Sarah explained. Her voice steadied despite the gravity of the situation. The testing process revealed alarming results. The tampered container contained traces of several ingredients that Catherine's medical team had specifically forbidden due to potential interactions with her treatment protocol. Most disturbing was the presence of concentrated extracts from foods known to cause severe digestive distress in patients with her particular health condition. "This isn't random contamination," Dr. Harrington concluded grimly. "Someone deliberately added substances that would cause significant illness, possibly requiring hospitalization if consumed by someone in Catherine's medical situation. This represents a serious threat to her health and safety." Sarah's mind raced through the implications. The attack had been carefully planned by someone with detailed knowledge of Catherine's medical restrictions and current treatment regimen. This level of inside information severely limited the pool of potential suspects and pointed toward someone with intimate access to the royal family's private medical information. Meanwhile, Margaret Thornfield continued her suspicious activities throughout the castle. Sarah's surveillance revealed that the assistant had made contact with several external individuals during the afternoon, including phone calls to unknown numbers and a brief meeting with someone in the castle's delivery area. The pattern suggested coordination with accomplices outside the royal household. The security officer faced an increasingly complex situation. Not only had someone attempted to poison Catherine, but evidence suggested a broader conspiracy involving multiple participants. The timing remained particularly troubling, executing such an attack during Catherine's first major public appearance since her health challenges would maximize both physical harm and public embarrassment. For the royal family, Sarah decided to expand her investigation while maintaining absolute discretion. She contacted Detective Inspector James Crawford from the Metropolitan Police's Royal Protection Unit, requesting immediate but covert assistance with what appeared to be a serious threat to royal safety. Crawford had worked closely with castle security for over a decade and could be trusted to handle the situation with appropriate sensitivity. "We need to identify everyone with access to the princess's medical information and food preparation areas," Crawford advised during their urgent consultation. This level of planning suggests someone with significant inside knowledge and regular access to restricted areas. The investigation revealed disturbing patterns in recent months. Several staff members reported unusual questions from Margaret Thornfield about Catherine's daily routines, meal preferences, and health-related schedules. At the time, these inquiries seemed like normal curiosity from someone devoted to serving the royal family efficiently. In retrospect, they appeared to be intelligence gathering for a carefully planned attack. Security camera footage provided additional evidence of Margaret's unauthorized activities. The recordings showed her accessing restricted areas on multiple occasions over the past 2 weeks, always during times when regular staff members were occupied elsewhere. She had clearly studied the castle's routine operations to identify opportunities for her clandestine activities. Most damaging was footage from earlier that morning showing Camilla handing Margaret a small package in a private corridor, accompanied by whispered instructions that the audio system couldn't capture clearly. The Queen Consort's body language suggested urgency and secrecy, supporting Sarah's suspicions about high-level involvement in the plot. As evening approached, Sarah faced critical decisions about how to proceed. Catherine remained unaware of the threat to her safety, continuing her preparation for the state dinner that represented such an important milestone in her recovery and return to royal duties. The princess's excitement about resuming her full role made the betrayal even more heartbreaking. The security team implemented emergency protocols without alerting Catherine or the visiting dignitaries to the crisis unfolding behind the scenes. Alternative food sources were secured, additional medical personnel were positioned discreetly nearby, and enhanced surveillance covered every aspect of the evening's proceedings. Sarah knew that exposing the plot would create a massive scandal within the royal household. Accusations against the Queen Consort's personal assistant, backed by evidence of possible involvement by Camilla herself, would shake the monarchy's foundation and create lasting damage to the family's unity and public image. However, Catherine's safety took absolute priority over political considerations. The princes had already endured significant health challenges, and subjecting her to a deliberate poisoning attempt was unthinkable. Sarah prepared to take whatever actions necessary to protect Catherine, regardless of the personal and professional consequences she might face. The state dinner was scheduled to begin in 3 hours when Sarah made the difficult decision to confront Margaret Thornfield directly. Rather than wait for more evidence, she chose to use the element of surprise to prevent any additional sabotage attempts and potentially extract a confession about the full scope of the conspiracy. Sarah found Margaret in Camilla's private sitting room, organizing papers and making final adjustments to the Queen Consort's evening schedule. The assistant looked up with practiced politeness when Sarah entered, but the security officer noticed subtle signs of nervousness, slightly trembling hands, avoiding direct eye contact, and an unusually defensive posture. "Margaret, I need to speak with you about some security concerns related to tonight's dinner," Sarah began, maintaining a professional tone while carefully observing the assistant's reactions. "Of course, Officer Mitchell. How can I help you?" Margaret replied, but her voice carried a slight tremor that hadn't been present in their previous interactions. Sarah decided to apply pressure immediately. "We've discovered tampering with the Princess of Wales's specially prepared food items. Security cameras show you accessing restricted kitchen areas multiple times this afternoon without authorization. I need you to explain your activities." Margaret's face went pale, and she gripped the papers in her hands so tightly that her knuckles turned white. For several seconds, she remained silent, clearly struggling with how to respond to the direct confrontation. I was just checking on preparations for Her Majesty." She wanted to ensure everything was perfect for the princess's first major event since her recovery. Margaret finally stammered, but her explanation sounded rehearsed and unconvincing. "That doesn't explain why you accessed the princess's private food storage area or why testing revealed dangerous contaminants in her meal components," Sarah pressed, watching as Margaret's composure continued to crumble under the weight of evidence. The assistant's breathing became rapid and shallow. She looked toward the door as if considering an escape, then back at Sarah with a mixture of fear and desperation. The internal conflict playing across her features suggested someone wrestling with loyalty to her employer versus recognition of the serious legal consequences she faced. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," Margaret whispered, her voice barely audible. "Her Majesty has been so stressed about Catherine's rising popularity and influence. She feels overshadowed, irrelevant. She needed something to remind everyone that Catherine isn't as strong as people think." Sarah felt a chill as the confession began. "Are you telling me that Queen Consort Camilla ordered you to poison Catherine?" "Not poison," Margaret protested quickly. "Just make her sick enough to miss tonight's dinner. Embarrass her publicly. Show that she's still fragile, still unable to handle her royal duties consistently. Her Majesty said it would be a small setback that would benefit everyone in the long run." The rationalization revealed the twisted thinking behind the plot. Camilla apparently believed that undermining Catherine's health and public confidence would somehow strengthen her own position within the royal hierarchy. The jealousy and insecurity driving such reasoning shocked Sarah, even after years of witnessing palace politics. "Margaret, you realize that Catherine's current medical condition means those substances could have caused severe complications, possibly requiring hospitalization?" Sarah explained, hoping to make the assistant understand the gravity of their actions. Margaret's face crumpled as the full implications sank in. Her Majesty assured me it would just be mild stomach upset. She said Catherine was being overdramatic about her health restrictions anyway. I never intended to cause serious harm. Where is Camilla now? Sarah demanded, knowing she needed to confront the Queen Consort before she could deny her involvement or destroy additional evidence. In her dressing room, preparing for tonight. Please, Officer Mitchell, I know I made a terrible mistake. I was just trying to serve my employer loyally. I never thought. Margaret's voice trailed off as tears began streaming down her face. Sarah radioed for backup security to ensure. Margaret couldn't leave the castle or communicate with anyone about their conversation. She then made her way to Camilla's private quarters, steeling herself for what would undoubtedly be the most difficult confrontation of her career, the Queen. Consort's dressing room bustled with activity as her personal stylist made final adjustments to her evening gown and jewelry. Camilla sat regally before an ornate mirror, seemingly the picture of royal composure, but Sarah detected subtle signs of tension in her posture and expression. Your Majesty, I need to speak with you privately about an urgent security matter, Sarah announced. Causing the stylist to freeze in surprise at the interruption, Camilla's eyes met Sarah's in the mirror, and for just a moment, the security officer saw a flash of something that might have been guilt or fear before the Queen Consort's training took over and her expression became carefully neutral. Ladies, please give us a moment, Camilla instructed her staff, who quickly gathered their supplies and left the room. Once alone, she turned to face Sarah with an air of imperial authority. What is this about, Officer Mitchell? Your personal assistant has confessed to tampering with Catherine's food on your direct orders. We have physical evidence of the contamination and security footage of the conspiracy. I need you to explain your involvement in this plot against the Princess of Wales. Camilla's mask of composure slipped for just an instant before she regained control. I have no idea what you're talking about. Margaret must be confused or lying to protect someone else. I would never do anything to harm Catherine. But Sarah had spent years reading people under stress, and she could see the calculation behind Camilla's eyes as the Queen Consort weighed her options. The denial came too quickly, too smoothly, like a prepared response rather than genuine shock at an unexpected accusation. Your Majesty, Margaret has provided detailed information about your instructions and motivations. We have video evidence of you providing her with materials this morning. The contaminated food contains substances that could have seriously endangered Catherine's health given her current medical treatment. The room fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the mantelpiece. Camilla stared at Sarah for long moments, clearly realizing that denial would no longer be sufficient. The Queen Consort's next words would determine whether she attempted to maintain her innocence or acknowledge her role in the conspiracy. You have no idea what it's like, Camilla finally said, her voice low and bitter. Watching everyone fawn over Catherine while treating me like a placeholder. She gets sympathy and admiration for every small achievement while my years of service are taken for granted. I thought a small reminder of her limitations might restore some balance. Sarah stared at Camilla in stunned silence as the full confession sank in. The Queen Consort had just admitted to orchestrating a deliberate attack against Catherine, motivated by jealousy and a twisted sense of competition within the royal family. The implications for the monarchy were staggering. Your Majesty, you understand that what you've described constitutes attempted assault, possibly attempted murder given Catherine's medical vulnerabilities, Sarah said carefully. Knowing she was navigating unprecedented territory and royal protection protocols, Camilla's composure finally cracked completely. She sank into her chair, no longer the imperious Queen Consort but a woman facing the devastating consequences of her actions. Murder? No, that was never. I just wanted her to be sick for one evening, to miss one important event. I never intended serious harm. The medical analysis shows that the substances you had, Margaret introduced, could have caused severe complications requiring immediate hospitalization. In Catherine's current condition, The risks were potentially life-threatening, Sarah explained, watching as the gravity of the situation penetrated Camilla's awareness. "I didn't know," Camilla whispered, though her words carried little conviction. "Margaret assured me she knew exactly what to use. Something mild that would just cause stomach upset." Sarah realized that Camilla's desperation had led her to trust her assistant's amateur knowledge about dangerous medical interactions. The Queen Consort's willingness to harm Catherine had blinded her to the potentially fatal consequences of her scheme. The security officer faced an impossible situation. Protocol demanded she immediately arrest anyone who posed a threat to royal family members, but arresting the Queen Consort would create a constitutional crisis. The scandal would destroy public confidence in the monarchy and potentially bring down the entire institution. "Your Majesty, I need to contact Detective Inspector Crawford and the palace private secretary immediately. This situation requires decisions far above my authority level," Sarah said, reaching for her radio. "Wait," Camilla said urgently, rising from her chair with a mixture of desperation and calculation in her eyes. "Think about what you're doing, Officer Mitchell. Exposing this will destroy the royal family. Is that really what you want? Is that what's best for the country?" Sarah paused, recognizing the attempted manipulation but also understanding the genuine dilemma. Her duty was to protect all members of the royal family, not just from external threats but potentially from each other. The situation had no clear precedent in royal protection protocols. "Your Majesty, my primary responsibility is Catherine's safety. Everything else is secondary to that obligation," Sarah replied firmly, refusing to be swayed by appeals to broader political considerations. Before Camilla could respond, Sarah's radio crackled with an urgent message from Detective Inspector Crawford. "Officer Mitchell, we need you in the main security office immediately. We've discovered additional evidence that expands the scope of this conspiracy." Sarah looked at Camilla with grim determination. "Your Majesty, you need to come with me. We're going to resolve this situation properly, regardless of the consequences." The walk to the security office felt surreal. Sarah escorted the Queen Consort through corridors filled with staff, making final preparations for the evening's state dinner. None of them aware that the royal family was in the midst of its worst internal crisis in decades. Camilla maintained her dignity but moved like someone walking to her execution dot in the security office. Detective Inspector Crawford had spread out a collection of evidence that painted an even more disturbing picture. Phone records showed that Margaret had been in contact with a tabloid journalist known for publishing damaging stories about the royal family. The plan apparently included not just making Catherine sick, but ensuring the media would be positioned to capture and publicize her distress. "The conspiracy goes beyond just the attack itself," Crawford explained as Sarah and Camilla entered the room. They intended to create a public relations disaster that would permanently damage Catherine's reputation and position within the royal hierarchy. Camilla's face went ashen as she realized the full scope of her assistant's activities. "I never authorized contact with the press. Margaret was supposed to handle everything discreetly. Your assistant has provided detailed statements about her instructions and your motivations," Crawford continued. "She's also identified several other staff members who were recruited to assist with various aspects of the operation. The investigation had uncovered a network of conspirators within the royal household, some motivated by loyalty to Camilla, others by financial incentives provided by tabloid journalists seeking inside information about royal family dynamics. The scope of the betrayal extended far beyond what Sarah had initially suspected. "Your Majesty, I'm afraid we need to place you under formal arrest pending further investigation," Crawford announced. Producing handcuffs and reading Camilla her legal rights, the moment felt surreal, unnerving. Queen Consort being arrested for conspiracy to harm another member of the royal family. Sarah wondered if anything like this had ever happened in the monarchy's 1,000-year history. As Crawford completed the arrest procedures, Sarah's phone rang with a call from Prince William's private secretary. Word was beginning to spread through the senior royal household about the crisis unfolding behind the scenes. Decisions would need to be made quickly about how to handle the situation publicly and what to tell Catherine herself. Officer Mitchell. His Royal Highness requires an immediate briefing about the threat to his wife's safety, the private secretary explained. He's prepared to cancel tonight's dinner if necessary to protect the princess. Sarah realized that the evening state dinner, which had seemed so important just hours earlier, was now the least of their concerns. The royal family faced a crisis that could fundamentally alter the monarchy's future. Regardless of how they chose to handle the immediate situation, the security office door opened to admit Dr. Harrington, who carried additional test results that would prove crucial to determining the legal charges against Camilla and her conspirators. The medical evidence would show definitively whether the plot constituted attempted murder or a lesser crime. The toxicology analysis is complete, Dr. Harrington announced grimly. The concentration of contraindicated substances was sufficient to cause severe medical complications, possibly including cardiac episodes given the princess's current medication regimen. This was potentially a life-threatening attack. Crawford nodded solemnly as he updated the charges against Camilla from attempted assault to attempted murder. The queen consort closed her eyes in despair, finally understanding that her jealousy-driven scheme had crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. Sarah looked at the woman she had sworn to protect, now facing the complete destruction of her position and reputation. The irony was devastating. In attempting to undermine Catherine's status, Camilla had guaranteed her own downfall and potentially damaged the monarchy more severely than any external threat could have achieved. The palace entered crisis mode as senior officials gathered for emergency consultations about how to handle the unprecedented situation. Private Secretary Sir Edward Fitzwilliam arrived at the security office within minutes, his usually composed demeanor showing cracks under the strain of managing a scandal that could topple the monarchy. "This is catastrophic," Sir Edward said quietly, surveying the evidence spread across the briefing table. A serving queen consort, arrested for attempting to murder the princes of Wales. The constitutional implications are staggering. Sarah watched as the full weight of responsibility settled on the shoulders of officials who had spent their careers protecting the royal family from external threats, never imagining they would face such betrayal from within. The decision about how to proceed would affect not just the individuals involved, but the future of the British monarchy itself. Prince William arrived at the security office looking haggard and furious. His usual diplomatic restraint had vanished, replaced by the protective instincts of a husband whose wife had been targeted for attack. "I want to know everything," he demanded. "Every detail about the threat to Catherine and who was involved." Detective Inspector Crawford provided a comprehensive briefing while William listened with growing anger. The prince's jaw tightened as he learned about the calculated nature of the plot and the potentially fatal consequences Catherine had unknowingly avoided. "Where is Camilla now?" William asked, his voice cold with controlled fury. "Under arrest in a secure holding area pending transfer to a proper facility," Crawford replied. "She be formally charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and several other serious offenses. And Catherine? Does she know anything about this?" William's concern for his wife was evident in every word. "Not yet, Your Royal Highness. We wanted to brief you first before determining how to inform the princess," Sarah explained. "She's still preparing for tonight's dinner, unaware of the threat she faced." William closed his eyes briefly, struggling with the decision about how much to tell his wife about the attack planned against her. Catherine had worked so hard to return to her royal duties, and learning about this betrayal would devastate her both personally and professionally. "The state dinner must be cancelled," William decided firmly. "I won't risk Catherine's safety, and we need time to process this crisis properly." Sir Edward nodded reluctantly, though he understood the diplomatic complications that would arise from cancelling such an important event at the last minute. "I'll contact the Danish Prime Minister's office immediately and arrange appropriate explanations that don't reveal the true nature of the emergency." As officials worked to manage the immediate crisis, Sarah reflected on how quickly the situation had escalated from routine security concerns to a threat that could reshape the monarchy forever. Her decision to investigate Margaret's suspicious activities had prevented a tragedy, but the revelations had created new challenges that might prove even more damaging in the long term. Dr. Harrington provided additional medical analysis that strengthened the criminal case against Camilla. The interaction between the introduced substances and the princess's current medications could have triggered cardiac complications or severe allergic reactions. We're not dealing with a prank that went wrong. This was a serious assassination attempt. The medical evidence eliminated any possibility of treating the incident as a misguided attempt at embarrassment rather than genuine attempted murder. Camilla's claims about intending only mild illness became irrelevant in the face of scientific proof about the potentially fatal consequences. Margaret Thornfield was brought to the security office under guard to provide additional testimony about the conspiracy's development. The assistant had completely broken down, sobbing as she described months of pressure from Camilla to find ways to undermine Catherine's growing influence within the royal family. Her Majesty became obsessed with Catherine's popularity. Margaret explained through tears. Every positive news story about the princess sent Her Majesty into rages. She said Catherine was stealing her spotlight and making her look irrelevant. The pressure to do something about it became unbearable. The testimony revealed a disturbing pattern of escalating animosity that had been building for months. Camilla's jealousy had grown from private resentment into active hostility, culminating in the decision to orchestrate a potentially fatal attack during Catherine's most important public appearance since her health crisis. William listened to Margaret's confession with visible disgust. You were trusted to serve this family honorably, and instead you participated in attempted murder. The betrayal is unforgivable. Your Royal Highness, I know there's no excuse for what I did, Margaret replied, her voice barely audible. I let my loyalty to Her Majesty override my judgment and my conscience. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Sir Edward addressed the assembled officials about the immediate challenges facing the monarchy. We need to develop a strategy for managing this crisis that protects the institution while ensuring justice is served. The public will eventually learn what happened, and our response will determine whether the monarchy survives this scandal. The weight of history pressed down on everyone in the room. The royal family had survived wars, abdications, divorces, and countless other crises. But an attempted murder by one family member against another represented uncharted territory that could prove unsurvivable. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from her supervisor, requesting an immediate report about the security situation. The circle of officials aware of the crisis was expanding rapidly, making it increasingly difficult to contain information about what had happened. We have perhaps hours before this becomes public knowledge, Sir Edward warned. Every decision we make in the next few hours will be scrutinized for decades to come. William stood quietly for several moments, clearly wrestling with impossible choices about how to protect his wife, his family, and the institution they represented. The prince, who had always navigated royal duties with careful diplomacy, now faced decisions that would define his future reign. Catherine needs to be informed immediately, William finally decided. She has the right to know what happened and to participate in decisions about how we proceed. This affects her more than anyone else. Sarah nodded, understanding that the most difficult conversation was still ahead. Telling Catherine that her stepmother-in-law had attempted to poison her would shatter the princess's trust and potentially affect her willingness to continue her royal duties. The personal betrayal might prove even more damaging than the physical threat she had unknowingly escaped. Catherine was in her private dressing room making final adjustments to her evening gown when William arrived with Sarah and Dr. Harrington. The princess's excitement about her return to major royal duties was evident in her bright smile and animated conversation about the evening's importance. The contrast between her joy and the devastating news they carried made the moment even more heartbreaking. William, you look so serious. Is everything all right with the dinner preparations? Catherine asked, immediately noticing her husband's grim expression. William took her hands gently, his love and protectiveness evident in every gesture. Catherine, we need to tell you something very serious. The dinner has been cancelled due to a security threat that was discovered this afternoon. Catherine's face showed confusion rather than fear. A security threat? What kind of threat? Are we talking about protesters or something more serious? Sarah stepped forward, knowing that delaying the truth would only make the revelation more difficult. Your Royal Highness, we discovered that someone had tampered with your specially prepared food with substances that could have caused severe illness or worse. Given your current medical treatment, tampered with my food? Catherine's voice rose in disbelief. Who would do such a thing? How did someone get access to the kitchen areas? William squeezed her hands tighter, preparing her for the most devastating part of the revelation. Catherine, the person responsible was someone we trusted completely. Someone within our own family. The princess stared at her husband in shocked silence, clearly struggling to process the implication of his words. When understanding finally dawned, her face went pale and she sank into a nearby chair. Camilla, Catherine whispered, the name falling like a stone in the quiet room. It was Camilla, wasn't it? Dr. Harrington provided the medical details that confirmed the severity of the attack. The substances that were introduced could have triggered serious complications with your current medications. We're talking about potentially life-threatening reactions, not just mild illness. Catherine listened in stunned silence as the full scope of the conspiracy was explained. Her stepmother-in-law, driven by jealousy and resentment, had orchestrated a plot that could have killed her. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could have. She wanted me dead? Catherine asked, her voice barely audible. Not dead necessarily, William replied carefully, but seriously harmed. Harmed enough to destroy your confidence and public standing. The medical risks were either ignored or not fully understood. Sarah watched Catherine process the information with remarkable composure, though the pain in her eyes was unmistakable. The princess, who had shown such grace and strength throughout her health challenges, now faced a different kind of trauma that would test her resilience in new ways. What happens now? Catherine asked, looking around the room at the officials who were responsible for protecting her family and the monarchy itself. Sir, Edward explained the legal proceedings that would follow and the difficult decisions facing the royal family. About public disclosure. Your Royal Highness, how we handle this crisis will affect not just the individuals involved, but the future of the monarchy itself. Catherine stood and walked to the window overlooking the castle grounds where staff members continued their duties, unaware of the drama unfolding above them. These people depend on us to represent something better than petty jealousy and family feuds. They deserve leaders who can rise above personal conflicts. Her words carried the wisdom of someone who understood that her response to this betrayal would be remembered long after the immediate crisis passed. The princess, who had been targeted for destruction, was already thinking about how to protect the institution that had failed to protect her. I want to see her, Catherine announced, turning back to face the room. I want to speak with Camilla before any final decisions are made about prosecution. William immediately protested. Catherine, you don't owe her anything. She tried to harm you out of pure spite and jealousy. I know what she tried to do, Catherine replied firmly. But she's still family and she's still the queen consort. If there's any possibility of resolving this without destroying the monarchy, I need to explore it. Sarah admired Catherine's strength, but worried about the emotional toll of confronting her would-be assassin. Your Royal Highness, are you certain you want to put yourself through that? Camilla has shown no genuine remorse, only self-pity about being caught. I'm certain, Catherine said with quiet determination. This family has survived centuries of challenges by finding ways to put duty above personal grievances. I won't let Camilla's jealousy destroy what generations before us built and protected. The meeting was arranged in a secure conference room with full security presence. Camilla, now dressed in simple clothes rather than royal regalia, looked haggard and defeated. The imperious queen consort had been replaced by a woman facing the complete destruction of everything she had worked to achieve. Catherine entered the room with dignity intact, showing no trace of fear or vindictiveness. The contrast between the two women was stark, one elevated by grace under pressure, the other diminished by the revelation of her petty motivations and willingness to cause harm. "Camilla," Catherine said simply, taking a seat across from her stepmother-in-law, "I want to understand why you thought hurting me would solve whatever problems you were facing." Camilla looked up with red-rimmed eyes, clearly struggling with shame and defiance. "You wouldn't understand. You've always been the golden child, the perfect princess everyone adores. You have no idea what it's like to feel invisible in your own family." "You're right, I don't understand attempted murder as a solution to feeling overlooked," Catherine replied calmly. "But I do understand that this family works best when we support each other rather than compete for public affection." The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with Catherine displaying remarkable compassion while maintaining firm boundaries about accountability. She offered Camilla the possibility of resignation and exile rather than public prosecution, contingent on full cooperation with the investigation and genuine efforts at making amends. Months later, as Catherine resumed her royal duties with even greater public support and respect, the crisis became a turning point that strengthened rather than weakened the monarchy. Camilla's quiet departure from public life allowed the institution to move forward while justice was served privately. Sarah's vigilance and, Catherine's grace had not only prevented a tragedy but demonstrated the values that made the royal family worth. Protecting the Princess of Wales emerged from the ordeal with her reputation enhanced. Her security improved, and her understanding deepened about both the privileges and perils of royal life. The attempt to destroy her had instead revealed the strength of character that made her truly worthy of the crown she would one day wear.